Thank you, Anita Lee, Emma Gilchrist, Brian Miles, and Emily Gilpin. We're excited to now open up this conversation live. We do have audience members registered tonight from Fredericton, Yellowknife, Glasgow, Amsterdam, and Manila, in addition to many other places. If you're here, you can please let us know in the chat where you're calling in from. We encourage everyone joining us from home to share this conversation on social media. You can tag us at The Walrus and use our hashtag Walrus Talks. If you have questions for this Q&A portion we're about to begin now, please submit it via the Zoom chat or in the Facebook Live comments. And now I will welcome back all our talkers for the Q&A session. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for those great thoughts and ideas. And the question of reader engagement came up in one way or another, I think, in every single person's talk. And one thing I was wondering about is that tension between popularity, clicks and likes, and what you might see as your own brand or integrity in your journalism. I wondered if you might want to speak to that. And Emma, maybe you could talk a bit about it because I think you spoke first.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's a real difference between an article that's popular, it might get a ton of views, and an article that drives a lot of engagement. Over the last year, we've been able to develop ways where we can track which articles drive newsletter subscriptions or memberships, for instance. And those aren't necessarily the same articles that go viral. So it's really, really interesting to see the difference there between, you know, maybe a really moving profile of an Indigenous leader that drives a ton of subscriptions and memberships versus a really, you know, kind of sexy headline about an oil spill or something that might drive a ton of views, but not drive as deep as engagement. So we really try to measure our relationship with our audience, both by, you know, the size of it, but also the depth of the relationship.
Emily, I think you've built that into your business model. I saw that you have the tagline impact over clicks in your editorial guidelines. Do you want to speak to that, and how does it help you build a relationship with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it a little bit in that little round page there, but you know, we're building trust. You know, we're working with our communities. A lot of our reporters are living in their communities, so you know, we're not really out here to try and get as many likes and clicks as we can. You know, we want to let people know that we're here, that they can reach out, that they can share their stories when they otherwise haven't. So ours is really about relationship, you know, building relationships, rebuilding trust, showing that we are going to do things differently, that we're not going to exploit people in times of trauma, whether it's from the uncoverings of the bodies this past summer on former residential institutions, or, you know, in the middle of wildfires when journalists are swarming in and trying to get pictures of people. We're showing people that we're not going to do that. We're going to do things differently. So yeah, that's pretty important to us.
Thanks. Brian, I have a question for you. Something that's been an issue or driving force at many big newspapers now is the rise of opinion columns versus the traditional reporting. I wondered, is that, how do you navigate that tension at Le Devoir?
Well, it's not so much a tension, but it's more of an intention to offer a diversity of point of views to the readers. Our readers value factual information as well as columnists and opinion. You just need to make the distinctions very clear. We separate facts from opinion, and we rely mostly on reporting. But the op-ed pages and the columnists are the people who are always the most read in the newspaper and on the website. People thrive for opinion. We just need to make sure that we offer quality in the opinion expressed, and that we tend to ask for on our columnists a strong commitment to fairness and equity in the way they will report their topics. I think Emma was bringing a good point, but you need to do both. If you rely on subscriptions, people need to know you and discover you before they subscribe. So you need to generate a bit of traffic in order to have a big funnel of conversion. The more people know you, the more chances that you will convert them into a subscriber. And this process for us takes a year. From the point in time when someone discovers the Devoir and the point, well, they will subscribe, we can actually count 12 months. So
Um,
traffic is important as long as it's not clickbait.
Brian, Le Devoir was very prescient in keeping up a paywall from the dawn of internet publishing. How crucial is that part of your success today?
Well, 2/3 of our revenues come from readers and donations. 2/3. We still have advertising. It's not the majority of our revenues, but it's there. We still need advertising to sustain our needs. And there's a third way that's been emerging is compensations or partnership with Facebook, Microsoft, and Apple. Those three corporations contribute to Le Devoir's revenues. And even though the Liberal government wants to table legislation, we strongly believe that the first step that you need to do as an editor is to find ways to talk with social medias. There was a time 2 years ago where social medias and traditional media weren't talking that much to each other. And we discovered over the time that you need to secure a new kind of relationship with them, and they're open to it. And this relationship is based on trust and mutual respect. And even whether there's a law or not, trust and respect are the basis of a new conversation with them.
Anita, you're pioneering a new type of publishing almost, because you are publishing in a social media platform. A lot of media outlets will adapt their reporting for Instagram or Twitter, but you're actually doing Instagram exclusives, aren't you?
Yeah, so I think a lot of publications adapt their reporting for multi-platforms, but I often find that that sometimes you see publications trying to shoehorn certain content onto platforms that are inappropriate. For example, just reposting a TikTok video onto Instagram, and that just the audiences that exist there, especially like younger folks, they can smell the lack of inauthenticity. They can see that you're just kind of being lazy about disseminating the story into the platform, as opposed to really being thoughtful about how to craft it in a way that actually that's tailored to the platform, and actually as a result can resonate better with the target audience. So I am doing Instagram exclusives, but this is not the only thing that I'm doing. And in fact, I want to speak to the first question that you asked everybody else around engagement, because I don't think it's a binary conversation between impact versus clicks. They're all important part of the funnel spectrum. And so part of what I'm doing is producing a lot of comedy stuff and comedy content, op-eds, as well as behind the scenes content on TikTok, and then do Instagram exclusive stories that are originals and service oriented. And then on the website, it's far more in depth. So it's kind of like encouraging my readers or consumers to kind of explore the different news products that I have and bring them along and build loyalty and build trust, engage them more deeply as they kind of go through the content offerings.
Okay, great. I'd love to hear more about how you're working with young people in a bit. But first, let's talk about the thing that's right in front of us. The pandemic has upended almost everything we knew about so much of life, including the way we relate to audiences. For us at the Walrus, we found differences in our traffic patterns, like the usual commuter hour for people reading was not to read at other times. What are things that you've been doing to try to meet people where they are right now, whether that's on platform or geographical location, or even their engagement with your work? Is it more vital? Is it more disinterested? I guess, Anita, you're meeting with them where they are by meeting them on the internet.
So I'm meeting them where this is based on a lot of exhaustive research. I also was, I worked in largely, when I was working in America for a long time, I was in management positions at youth-oriented publications. So I really understand internet culture and youth culture really well. I was news director at Complex, which is a hip hop publication, Mashable, which is a tech, like youth-oriented tech publication, Fusion, which really was focused on diverse and underrepresented communities in the US. So it's not only meeting them where they are in terms of platforms, but it's also seeking out these communities and meeting them where they are. So one of the first things I've done is try to engage local community organizations on the ground. We have partners like the East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club, which is obviously in a news desert like Scarborough. We are connected to Food Share, which is like a local grassroots organization that explores food justice. So it's really important for me to actually interact and engage with these small organizations, as well as local folks on the ground, to figure out what actually matters to them. and engage them from the get-go, because it's up to me to earn their trust. It's not up to them to find me, you know?
What advice would some people on this panel give young journalists who want to go into the business? It's an exciting time, but it's in some ways never been harder.
Well, I can go if you want, or leave everybody else. I've talked a bit so far. So, ladies, go ahead, please.
I'm asking because we know everyone wants to be a journalist, right? It's the best job in the world.
Yes.
This is such a tough question. I feel like Emily is going to have the best answer to this somehow. But yeah, I mean, I would just say that, you know, the opportunities that exist today for people like me and Anita and Emily didn't exist like 5 years ago. So things are really rapidly changing. Like when I left the Herald, I basically thought I'd never work in journalism again. And it turns out that was really wrong. And now, you know, if you're passionate and you can find a subject that isn't being covered anywhere else and find an audience for it and connect with them, there is a way to do this, basically. I mean, it's not easy, and I'm not going to pretend that that's accessible to everybody, but there are possibilities that exist now that didn't exist before. And I think in the new media space, it's a super exciting time with lots of new opportunities.
I'll just like add on to that and say I totally agree with that. I think there are way more opportunities for people who are interested in maybe just familiarizing yourself with what exactly you love to do. Like maybe you are a more investigative journalist, right? Or maybe you want to be more involved in the social media campaign with a certain news organization. Maybe you want to be doing daily news. That's your thing. You know, you want to be showing up, spending more time on stories, like really just maybe spending some time to recognize what is it that I love, what kind of journalist do I want to be, and then being able to really express that to the organization that you want to work with, that you approach.
Yeah.
Emily, do you think there's things that Indigenous media can do that mainstream media can't touch in Canada? Just can't do?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a big way it's and there's different kinds of, you know, Indigenous media. Like we're one example of kind of community, and we're restrained, you know, by the LGI funding and that sort of thing. But I think it's relationships. And, you know, in journalism, they use certain words like access, right? And obviously I kind of question some of those words because it can feel very exploitative, but it's, you know, it's relationships. It's being asked, like a number of our reporters, pretty much everyone has been like, hey, this is a story that, you know, we just want to share with you, or yes, you can come into my home, or yes, you know, you can come to this gathering or to this potlatch, or, you know, please show up here. And so it's, you know, it's relationships, building that trust. And then also, you know, cultural nuances, like not that an Indigenous journalist is just going to get it just by being Indigenous, but you know, if you've lived or have lived experiences or have families or relationships, you're going to understand a lot of things that people outside of these communities just maybe don't get in terms of nuances and certain words that just wouldn't be used, you know, that can kind of create a block in a relationship. So yeah, I think it's a context, it's relationship, it's understanding a bigger picture. I think there's a lot of things that Indigenous journalists are able to do differently.
How does everyone feel right now about the next 5 or 10 years? Optimistic or scared? And 3 of you have outlets that didn't exist 5 or 10 years ago. So
I feel super optimistic in the new media space. Like if you just look at like 3 years ago, the Narwhal was like 2 young women with a dream, and now we have 16 staff. And I think that's only going to keep growing, and the model is really sustainable. So I feel really optimistic, and we're just one little example, because I think lots of other outlets can pop up and like replicate that kind of model and use other kinds of models that are working as well.
Yeah,
I feel optimistic too, but go ahead, Anita.
Oh, sorry, Brian.
Go ahead.
Crosstalk on Zoom.
I'll go after you.
Thank you. I am also very optimistic. I several years ago, I anticipate that there was like many of my peers here anticipate that there would be an explosion of digital media news outlets that emerged in Canada, and I'm so excited by that. I remember actually leaving. I moved to New York City because I just couldn't cover the stories that I wanted to, and I actually remember working at the Star and having editors tell me like, the stories that you're pitching are not for our audience, but how do you define our audience, right? And I went to the States because I wanted to cover racial justice issues, equity issues that I was passionate about that I didn't see any other Canadian outlets covering. And then since I've moved home after, during the discourse, after then subsequently leaving to start my own consulting business and then launching the Green Line, there's like so many different pathways in journalism, which is so incredibly exciting. And I also felt like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving the Toronto Star year-long internship for this, like blog effectively. What am I doing? I'll never be able to work in this country again. And it didn't end up being the case. Like it's such a fantastic time for young journalists to enter the field. And there's just so many resources for you to go it alone or go it, take the traditional route or, work in a smaller team. So I think it's cool.
You'll find that I'm a bit old school or naive, but I do believe that as long as we live in a vibrant democracy and a stable one, there will be a need for trusted information and quality of reporting. I think that readers will be willing to pay for that content. When I started in the business in 93, 91, there was no jobs around. I was ashamed to have a full-time job at Le Devoir in my generation. It was nothing that you could expect. Today's there are jobs everywhere and you can create your own opportunities like you did. And it's very impressive what you did so far, ladies. There's also something that we need to address is the fact that we're going to be thriving as long as we realize that we're not mass medias anymore. Facebook is a mass media. We're not even in a breaking news industry. Twitter is breaking news. We all operate to some extent in the long tail. We are mostly niche players. Some niches are bigger than others, but we're not mass media anymore. So we have to tailor our content to the need of the audience. This is what you're all doing and all advocating for. And this is what we're trying to do at Le Devoir as well. If you stay focused on the relationship with your readers and your audience, you'll be fine. And you'll sleep well most of the time, but nothing has to be taken for granted. There are things that we did 3 years ago doesn't work anymore. And newsletters are big right now to gather new users and to generate a database. Maybe in 2 or 3 years from now, newsletters will be dead. I don't know, but I tend to prepare myself for the best and the worst at the same time. And this is how I can sleep at night.
Last question from me, and then I'll see if we have room for some audience questions. How does diversity and inclusion fit into the business model? Because a lot of what we're talking about is how we're surviving financially in a time when media in traditional senses is quite threatened. What do we need to do over the next little while to ensure that the media is in a better place than it is right now, in Canada especially?
So I actually think that prioritizing diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice is a way to actually make your outlet more financially sustainable. Because when you're serving, you're not just serving a homogenous group of like faceless audience members where you're just saying putting the label broadly, oh, Canadians or Torontonians. You're really hyper serving niche communities that, in particular, if they're underserved, they're going to be responsive, they're going to be loyal, they're going to be engaged, and they're going to be far more likely to actually pay for the coverage that you produce for them. So I mean, I think it's incumbent or it's essential for the survival of any modern news outlet today to make sure that they embed those best practices from the foundation. And that this needs to be also leadership needs to take it seriously, because as we know, culture is dictated by folks at the very top. And so you need to walk the walk. There's no going back. There's no excuse. Like, we've arrived. And so if you're not doing it, you're just behind, frankly.
Yeah, everything Anita said. And I totally agree. It's like imperative to running a successful business as well as being the right thing to do. And, you know, by having more diverse writers on staff, for instance, you're going to tell better stories, you're going to produce better journalism, you're going to be able to serve communities in a better way. And at the end of the day, I think like a lot of our outlets for us here today, like there's room for us because there were massive gaps left by traditional media and massive communities left unserved by traditional media. And our, you know, sense of duty to those communities and a sense of where we can actually create revenue to sustain that journalism has led us to filling those gaps.
Emily, you have a small outlet, and I think of all the people you haven't talked about where your funding comes from. What do you need to succeed? What can all of us listening help you do to keep going?
Thanks for that. I mean, I just want to add on to that last question. I think everyone made some really good points, and I'll just remind us that this younger generation that's growing up with a whole different access to internet and all of these different social medias, like they're going to take this whole industry by storm as well. So I think diversifying is crucial to the success and sustainability of all of our business. But you know, yeah, we have a small team and we've been primarily funded through the local journalism initiative, which, you know, has been great to be able to have these opportunities to work with new reporters and, you know, kind of train Indigenous journalists and get out there and tell these stories. But it's not sustainable, right? Because we only get these contracts yearly and there's a lot of restraints, and that's restricted what we've been able to do and report on. So, you know, otherwise we do rely on our subscribers, right? We rely on people because we don't have advertisements either. And then like-minded organizations. So, you know, I would again encourage people to support and subscribe and share the word. And, but I always believe as well, like you have to provide something that people want. You know, I don't like to just kind of beg, you know, please help us. It's like people are going to pay for what they want. And when you show them that you're, you know, providing something that's worth their time and energy, then that's a good trade, right? So I think definitely to spread the word as well and to get involved would be very, very grateful, but we're going to be doing our part as well. So that might be an organic reach. Thanks.
I have one question from Kevin Chan of Facebook, who would like to know how platforms have helped or hindered organizations like yours. I think all of us are funded by Facebook on this talk.
We total honesty here, we're part of the Facebook initiative that the Walrus signed with Facebook. We need Facebook to in the funnel of engagement. Our videos or reporting, when we post it on Facebook, they get traction, more traction than if you put them on a website. People come to the news by social media nowadays. So it would be foolish on our part to block Facebook or not to use Twitter or not to use Google. You need to build a relationship to use those platforms as tools. And once they step up and do partnerships, again, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, and Google are all willing right now to speak with publishers and to strike deals. And they do that in the French and English environments. It's only up to the editor to put them on the list and speed dial their numbers or their emails and find a way to secure a new kind of relationship. This is the basis. And again, some people are questioning the legislative intentions from the federals. What are we expecting from them? Whether they legislate or not, the main thing is to sit at the same table and try to find common ground and a new relation to the new deal. That's
okay.
The ABC.
I've let us run too long for that. I'm sorry. We have reached the end of our Q&A session, but the conversation is never over. I'd like to thank our talkers and everyone who joined us today for this conversation, very close to my heart. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And thanks to our speakers, Anita Lee, Emma Gilchrist, Brian Miles, and Emily Gilpin. If you enjoyed today's event, we have more coming up live in October. On Tuesday, October 19th, TD Bank Group presents the Walrus Talks at Home, Reimagining Resilience. And then on Tuesday, October 26th, Facebook Canada is back with us again to present the Walrus Talks at Home CanCon Online. And then on October 28th, we'll have a talks presented by Media Smarts. Just check in with us at thewalrus.ca/events. You can RSVP. Also, we'll post videos from tonight so you can watch them again and share them. Also, keep an eye on your inbox. The best way to stay up to date with the Walrus and not miss any event is to opt in for our newsletter. At the Walrus, we believe that trustworthy journalism is an essential service. And with your support, we can continue to do what we do, which is provide fact-checked, thought-provoking journalism. So if you enjoyed this free event, consider making a donation. You can go to our website at thewalrus.ca and click on donate. Donations $20 or more will receive a charitable tax receipt. Thanks again to Rachel, Kevin, Mark, and Aaron at Facebook Canada for making this conversation possible tonight and our year-long partnership together. Thanks to our annual sponsors, Facebook Canada, as well as Inspire, Labatt Breweries of Canada, Air Canada, and Shaw. Community is really important in these COVID times, and each one of you is part of the Walrus. Thank you so much and have a great evening.